April 24th to 30th is National Crime Victims' Rights Week. That's brought California's early release program to the center of debate. NTD's Cynthia Kai has a special report with the Sacramento District Attorney to hear more about the cause behind the rise in violent crime.
California has seen a rise in violent crime in recent months. Just this month, a shooting at the state capitol took the lives of 6 people and injured 12 others. Sacramento's District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert says the rise in violent crime is a result of poor criminal policies.
We've got this bad combination of kind of flooding our communities with releases. You've got inadequate supervision. You've got inadequate plans for them, inadequate rehabilitation. Then you've got good legislators like Assemblymember Jim Cooper, who's trying to pass a bill that would just put a GPS device on a high-risk parolee. And our legislature is saying no. That is illogical, and it's not good for public safety.
The April 3rd Sacramento shooting resulted from an unspecified gang dispute that led to gunfire in downtown Sacramento. An investigation later found that some suspects were repeat felons who were released from prison just weeks before the incident.
We can never forget the human toll of crime, okay? The consequences of crime on people's lives. It changes people's lives, particularly violent crime. It changes how they look, their outlook on life. It changes how they raise their children. It changes how perhaps the professions they choose.
California's early release program emerged from a 2016 voter-approved proposition.
California passed a proposition in 2016 called Prop 57, which was allegedly designed to expedite releases through rehabilitation and to allow what we call more credits, meaning, early releases. So many of us in this profession, prosecutors and law enforcement, have been kind of sounding the alarm actually before Prop 57 passed.
But Schubert says many DAs believe the idea of early releases hurts public safety, especially if inmates aren't given re-entry plans back to society.
And we said, if you just start handing out credits to dangerous people, or if you let them, I should just easily say, if we're going to let violent people out of prison early without adequate rehabilitation, then we're failing. We're going to fail that individual for not rehabilitating them. We're going to fail the victims for not holding people accountable, and we're going to only endanger public safety.
In January 2022, the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, or CDCR, enacted an emergency regulation. Inmates can participate in services and programs to increase the credits they earn to reduce their prison sentence. Their reasoning was to limit COVID infections, despite low death rates. Now, the CDCR plans to make the accelerated credit system permanent, which can reduce certain prison sentences by up to 67%. Proponents of the change say it promotes participation in rehab and educational services, but a handful of district attorneys spoke against the idea at the April 16th public hearing.
People that go to prison now in California, it took a lot of effort to get there. It's either that they are repeat offenders over and over and over again, or they committed a very particularly violent crime, such as a murder or a sexual assault. So the population in our prison system now are the most dangerous of the most dangerous.
Additionally, California released thousands of inmates from state prisons during the pandemic. Schubert says the state legislature needs to strengthen criminal laws, allow prosecutors to prosecute criminal offenders, and roll back early release programs.
First of all, we need to fund law enforcement to do their jobs. Okay, this concept of defunding the police has and never will be a good idea. Listen, we can always invest in more prevention programs. That's something we should all be willing to do. But we must have a robust law enforcement in California and across this country.
Schubert is one of the candidates running for California's Attorney General's seat. The primary election is on June 7th, and midterm elections are on November 8th. Cynthia Kai, NTD News, California.
According to a recent study, most California incentive programs designed to reduce energy use are not effective. In fact, many have the opposite effect. NTD's Eileen Ang gives a look at how that happens.
California spends about $1 billion on programs to encourage energy saving, from light bulbs to solar panels. But a study led by the University of California, Los Angeles found that most of them haven't resulted in any energy savings. Instead, many have actually led to increased energy consumption. UCLA's Stephanie Pinstall, a co-author of the paper, said this is possibly a result of a phenomenon related to technological advancements. Often when new technology makes something more efficient, the more people use it. The technical term for this is Jevons paradox. Pinstall said, people think they can increase consumption without increasing their bills, so they use more. This conclusion comes after researchers analyzed electricity bills of more than 11 million households in Southern California between 2010 to 2015. California aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions to 40% below 1990 levels by 2030. Homes make up about 40% of overall emissions in the state's urban areas. The research recommends ways to improve the programs, like making them accessible to older, less energy-efficient buildings.
California is cracking down on catalytic converter theft. An assemblyman proposed a bill that would ensure the catalytic converter would match the vehicle. One community is already taking action.
The California government is looking to stop catalytic converter theft plaguing the state. But some local communities are not waiting around. The City of Industry in Los Angeles held their 7th Etch and Prevent Catalytic Converter Theft Prevention program on Wednesday.
And the purpose of that is to prevent a suspect from seeing a catalytic converter and stealing it after we put the license plate on there, or afterwards, if a license plate that is found and we've recovered it, we can trace that catalytic converter through the license plate that was etched on that catalytic converter.
While many drivers might not know what a catalytic converter is, thieves do. Theft of the car components has increased by over 1,500% in some parts of California in just a few years. More people are getting familiar with this obscure part, which, if stolen, can cost anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 to replace.
Just want to get the car protected because I had neighbors and friends who have had their catalytics actually stolen from their vehicles. So better than to make something so it's deterrent than making it easily just taken in and get it recycled, however they're doing, whatever they're doing with them.
That's where the free Catalytic Etch Prevention program comes in. The etch takes only several minutes. Despite the changes, Deputy Huang isn't celebrating yet.
I see this as ongoing based on the precious metals that are inside catalytic converters, and until that changes, the technology of that changes, I think these types of thefts will continue unless we do things like this.
As for the state government, Assemblyman Adam Gray introduced Assembly Bill 2682. It aims to reduce theft the same way as what the LA Sheriff's Department is already doing, etching the VIN number on the catalytic converter. It was approved by the Assembly Transportation Committee on Tuesday and is waiting for a vote at the Assembly Public Safety Committee.
Imagine you're staying at a hotel and they lose your suitcase containing $8,000 worth of items. Then the hotel pays you only a fraction of that. And that's what happened in California because of a loophole in the law. NTD's Arian Pasdar has the details.
A California law enacted in 1872 limits a hotel's liability to $1,000. Now, many say the law is outdated. That's mostly because $1,000 back then is only worth around $50 today. According to ABC, the guest had various items such as laptops and even a hard drive with his social security number and tax returns in the suitcase at the Marriott Marquis in San Francisco. He sued the hotel, won, and was awarded $5,000. Later, the hotel appealed on grounds of the law enacted in 1872. The hotel won the appeal and they had to pay the guest only around $1,500. A professor at the University of California, Berkeley, says this law and others should probably be changed.
Well, there are all kinds of rules and regulations and laws that were enacted long ago, and some even recently, that perhaps could be usefully and sensibly updated. But legislatures and regulators don't always get around to updating them in a very prompt fashion.
According to ABC, a San Francisco Superior Court judge also says the law didn't achieve an equitable outcome in this case. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
Another part of the state is bringing masks back. One Bay Area transit agency voted unanimously to reinstate the mask mandate.
What is being proposed is temporary. The intention is not to have a permanent mask requirement on BART.
On Thursday, Bay Area Rapid Transit, or BART, voted 7-0 to require masks on its trains through at least July 18th. This comes after a federal district court judge struck down the CDC's mask requirement for public transit and airplanes about a week ago. Passengers will need to keep the mask on in all portions of stations beyond fare gates. Those exempt from the requirement are children 2 and under and those with medical conditions. Those who fail to comply will be fined $75. A new exhibit gives a rare and educational look into the life and mind of a global martial arts icon, Bruce Lee. It's currently on display at the Chinese Historical Society of America in San Francisco, just 2 blocks from where Lee was born.
Bruce Lee, a man of many talents and achievements, is being honored in a new exhibit showcasing his life and legacy. The exhibit just opened this week in the place where Lee was born in San Francisco's Chinatown. Justin Hoover, the executive director for the Chinese Historical Society of America, says the display is to show Lee as more than just an actor and martial artist. It's designed around 4 core concepts: Bruce Lee as the thinker, the visionary, an athlete, and as a unifier.
We all know Bruce Lee as a silver star screen, kung fu master, but you don't always think of him as a business innovator. You don't always think of him as a philosopher. You don't always think of him as an artist, but he is these things, and we have the documents to prove it.
The exhibit has a plethora of rare memorabilia and items from Lee's personal life, like this weight bench. There's also a space in the back with an immersive multimedia experience.
And I was impressed to see how much he put into not just studying the martial arts, but also philosophy.
Hoover also said that the exhibit wants to show how Bruce Lee broke a lot of barriers.
He pioneered a lot. It was in cinema, it was in business, even in athletics. People see him often as a martial artist, but they don't realize that he was a champion-winning cha-cha-cha dancer. He was a fencer. He was a weightlifter. He was one of the first martial artists to adopt Western boxing techniques. He looked up to Joe Louis, and he looked up to Muhammad Ali,
The show is being featured at the Chinese Historical Society of America Museum. Both the museum and the exhibit creators hope the show will help revitalize the Chinatown neighborhood in San Francisco after experiencing a harsh 2 years due to pandemic lockdowns. Jason Blair, NTD News, San Francisco.